Hi, my name's Gabe. I'm a resident of the city of Oxnard. I'm going to be doing a video for you about the potential new site for the Oxnard homeless shelter that we currently have at the former National Guard Armory, and I'll be talking about the next site that the housing department is looking at moving it to. First, I want to disclose that I live in the Fremont South neighborhood, and I'm also the Fremont South Neighborhood Council Chair, and that's where the current shelter is located. It's located at the corner of 2nd Street and K Street. Which is over near the Oxnard Union High School District office and the Oxnard Adult Ed School, and then also the old Oxnard High School, which is now known as Campus Park. Our neighborhood has had this shelter for a number of years. Previously, when it was the winter warming shelter, where it would only be open like 12 hours at night during the winter, and then last winter they turned it into the temporary emergency shelter, where it was now open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And we've had, some incidents over the years. Some years have been harder than others. But this year, I will say that we've had really great management of the site with the shelter and great communication with the city and the shelter staff with our neighborhood. And the residents, I feel, even those who are not super happy about having it in our neighborhood, have been okay with having it here. The thing is that our shelter is actually also in the landing path, which is known as a runway protection zone of Oxnard Airport. And so it's not an ideal location, in addition to the fact that it's across the street from the Police Activities League, which is a youth-oriented program. It's across the street from the Oxnard Union High School District offices. It's near the Oxnard Adult Ed, and it's housed right in the middle of a neighborhood. So there's a lot of stuff counting against it. However, there was nowhere else to establish a shelter, and the city owned the property, and so it just made sense to do it there. And like I said, our residents have, with open communication with the city, been okay with it for the most part. Which brings us to where we are now. Because it's not an ideal location, the city housing department has been searching for a replacement location for a couple of months now. And it just came out recently, and I had mentioned in a video a couple months back that I suspected they were looking at this particular site for the shelter location. So let me show you the spot they're proposing to move the shelter to. The new proposed spot is at 1258 Saviors Road, which is a building just south of the 5 Points intersection on Saviors. And you see it here. You may recognize it as formerly a furniture store and a thrift store. And so the housing department has been in negotiations with the owner of the property to lease the property. And this would be the site of the new shelter. So speaking now as a neighborhood council chair for my neighborhood, when we found out about this, I brought it up as an agenda item at our most recent meeting, and all of our residents, including those who are not really supportive of having the shelter in our neighborhood, even they were not really supportive of moving it to this new location. And there's a number of reasons why. The first reason being that the current location at the Armory, there are fairly frequent visits from first responders, typically the fire department, which is right down the street at Fire Station 1. When they come out, they'll bring their large truck and they'll park it right on K Street, and they'll essentially block half of the street to be able to go in, check on the person who's in need of medical attention, and be able to block off that part of the road in case they need to access things from their truck. In this new location, with the size of the parking lot and the way that the property is laid out, I can't imagine in a medical emergency that a fire truck would be able to get to that back portion easily. So I'm guessing they'd have to block off half of Saviors Road to be able to access the front door and be able to help the person who needs medical help. I'm hoping you can understand the issue with that, though. If we have half of one lane of Saviors on the northbound side blocked off, that is a very busy intersection, especially during rush hour times. So, I mean, traffic-wise, it doesn't seem to be like it's going to be a great move. It might actually really hinder traffic a lot there, depending on the frequency of visits from first responders. The next issue is parking itself. If you go by the current shelter location and you look at the parking lot, it's full almost every day. And people who are staying at the shelter who are clients, they have cars and they probably have a lot of their belongings in their cars, and it's great for them to be able to have a place to park it where it's going to be undisturbed, it's nearer to them, and they can stay in the shelter and not worry about their things being messed with. The thing is that the current site that they have, all the parking spaces are full. The new site has 20 some odd parking spaces, I believe, and I don't know if that's going to accommodate everybody in addition to staff or whoever drives in and needs to use the parking lot. There's also another issue of space in that the current shelter site has these large Connex boxes where people can store their personal things if they have nowhere else to store them. And they'll be locked up and they're monitored by security and they don't have to worry about them. And I'm not sure if there's space at this new spot that's going to be able to accommodate 1 or 2 Connex boxes. Again, with space, at the current shelter site, there is a mobile shower unit that's brought in. It's about the size of a large motorhome. They bring that in, they set it up, and people can shower in there and use the facilities. And if they needed to bring that in, I don't think that a place that was formerly a furniture store or a thrift store has shower facilities built into it. So they'd either need to build that out and install that there, or bring in these mobile facilities again. And again, is there space to do that? Lastly, with space and parking, is there's a number of people who have motorhomes or RVs or large full-size vans that they live in when they're not at the shelter. And, again, with parking, is there enough parking in order to accommodate large size vehicles like that? I can assure you that street parking for those large vehicles along Savers is probably not going to be ideal. The last point is something that was very important to many of the residents who voiced their opinion on this at our neighborhood council meeting, and that's the cost. So just some basic math on that. The current or the new location is going to be 10,000 square feet plus 7,000 square feet of office space. But let's just look at the 10,000 square feet. If they were to rent that whole 10,000 square feet and they're being charged $1.25 per square foot, which is mentioned in the staff report, well, that's $12,500 a month on rent. Even if they negotiated like 10% off of that, that's still a lot of money to be paying on rent. Where the current shelter place is at the Oxnard Armory, it's free. There's no cost to the city aside from utilities and the staff time. The city owns that property. They're not paying to rent the space. So my neighborhood council took a formal vote and decided to write a letter to the Commission on Homelessness and copy the city manager and the housing director to let them know that in our neighborhood, as we discuss this, we don't feel that this is an appropriate site to move the new shelter to. There's just a lot of stuff counting against it with traffic, with lack of space, and with the cost going to the city and the taxpayers. So we've actually offered to allow the city, hey, you know what? We know you said you'd be out of the Oxnard Armory by December of 2019. We're willing as a neighborhood to let it stay longer. We're not going to hold you to that if you need more time to find a more appropriate place that's going to serve the clients of the shelter well and serve the surrounding neighborhood. And that's another point I want to make too, is the surrounding neighborhood. There's a lot of commercial businesses directly north of that location, and then to the east and south is all residential zones. And I'm hoping that those folks have been reached out to already to be able to provide input. So I'm hoping after seeing this, you'll be willing to provide your thoughts and your input to the city. The housing department is looking for input from residents and the business owners in the area who are going to be directly situated next to the new shelter. So that's people from the Five Points neighborhoods, the Calgeisler neighborhood, and the Bartolo Square North neighborhood. A meeting is going to be held for the Commission on Homelessness on Monday, November 4th. I hope that you can find time to make it out. If you can't, the commission chair, Miss Peggy Rivera, has offered to be open to responses. You can either send an email to the commission to her directly and copy the housing director, or feel free to, in the comment section of this, tag her, Peggy Rivera. She's made that offer. Tag her on Facebook or on Nextdoor, Peggy Rivera, and let her know your thoughts so that she can take them to the Commission on Homelessness meeting next week. I hope you're able to find this information useful, and if you have any questions, feel free to leave them down in the comments, and I look forward to seeing you next time.